the most important thing, to me at least, is whether or not integrating ethics into the class is making a difference. And actually, if you were to ask me this on the street, I would respond to you the same way I respond to the students who ask if this is going to be on the test. I just go, I don't know. But when it comes to the most recent work I've been doing with integrating ethics, I think I can comfortably say yes. I think the students are gaining a sense of business ethics and ethics in general after taking the class. And I've got two examples I'll share with you. Part of the Daniels initiative with my fellowship was we were picking a course, OB, my cousin Grace Ann, you teach Theory 9 as well, and I'm piloting things, and then the hope is everyone will integrate everything into their courses. We probably have 6 sections of 3 or 9 a semester of organizational behavior. And so one of the tasks that I took on was finding a textbook that had a lot of ethics coverage. And there aren't any book reps in here. It's an ethical group if I've ever met one, because 6 sections of a course is a lot of books, and a lot of books is a lot of money, and nobody wants to pass up the opportunity to have that book adoption. So I was a very popular guy with book reps when they found out that we were going to be changing the textbook. And so what I was able to negotiate, and I smile about this because I couldn't believe it actually happened, was I was able to get a textbook for a class test. So I got it wound up being 44 textbooks, $170 each textbook, 44 of them for free to give to the students to get feedback from them after the semester. That was this past semester. So I think it was over $8,000 in books that I was able to give to the students for free. So the organizational behavior class, they get free books. So the first day of class, when they find this out, I'll give you the number. It approximated a third. What did 1/3 of the class want to know? Can I sell this book at the end of the semester? And I looked into it. The buyback value on the book was $80. $80. So about 1/3 of them on the first day. It was Christmas. I had it's still in my office, a huge hand truck. 44 books are heavy. And I haul them across campus. And I show up, and a book rep is there helping me pass out the books. And they all want, can I sell this back? Can I sell this back at the end of this semester? So I say no. That's the first day of class. The last day of class, the class before the final, I said, you don't forget, and they were told, you can't keep the book. You can mark it up, you can highlight it, you can do whatever. And this is where this in and of itself was interesting to me, because the rationalization comes out. Well, if I highlight in it, the publisher, they can't use it. So why do they need it back? Why can't I sell it? Doesn't matter. They want it back. So first day they want to sell it. The day before the final, I tell them, don't forget to bring your books to the final exam. So there was kind of an impromptu lottery. I don't know if lottery is the right word. Several faculty started to wonder how many books I would actually get back. Of 44. Who wants to take a guess?
42.
42?
All of them.
All of them? It wasn't all.
No.
It wasn't all of them. 41 of 44 textbooks were returned. And I'll sound like a drug czar, that's a street value of $3,000. But the day before the final, the last class, the class before the final, one student said, are you sure we can't keep it? It was very specific. Two things actually came up. One, are you sure they asked for them back? Yes. 2, are you sure you're not asking for them back so you can sell them? I said, no. But what blew me away was the one person asked, "Are you sure we can't sell them back?" I never had to say a word. The guy sitting right over here said, and he started it with dudes. He said, it wasn't me. He said, "Dude, it's been a class with ethics covers." And to me, that said something though, right? Because on the first day of class, about a third of them asked if they could sell the book back. Now, one or two of them. But what was also amazing to me about this was I had 7 people who forgot to bring their book to the final. And I thought for sure I would never see the books again. 6 of them, 2 of them brought them to my office while I was in there during office hours. 4 of them put them in my mailbox. One of them, realizing she didn't have the book, ran home after the final and brought it right back. I never even made it back to my office. So to me, I think that's saying something about ethics and having an impact on the students. The last thing I'll say, this is more anecdotal.
The 3 who did trend them.
Well, I don't know who they are. That actually even makes it that much better because it was 100% honor system. You could not return your book, I wouldn't know. So the 3 people, I don't know who they were.
I had a question. So
Yes.
Did you sell it for you?
Well, I'll tell you, I've got 3 of them at home because I'm the typical absent-minded professor. Every time I take a book home, then I forget it's there, so I bring another one home. And there's 38 of them stacked up in front of in my office.
My office is across the check.
But from an anecdotal evidence standpoint, and again, I apologize for reading, but if it's small and you can't read it, I said my goal isn't to teach people ethics, it's to teach them to think about ethics, to have them, instead of make the snap judgment or go with the black or white response, to actually think about what's going on. And so I do reaction papers throughout the semester. And this last semester, I decided instead of doing it on a class, on a specific class, I would do it on the semester. And the reaction paper was just on the coverage of ethics throughout the semester. And a student, the only reason I know it was her because she always wrote in hot pink ink. She sat in the way back top right corner. Our discussions in class made me realize that not everyone has the same point of view. Just because I think my point of view is ethical and reasonable doesn't mean that others will think the same way. That's something very important that I'm willing to, that I will remember and consider whenever I am put in a management/leadership role. And that made me happy. To me, it wasn't, I now know that I may not pay the bribe, or I now know that I wouldn't do this. It was just, I now realize that different people think about ethics differently. And what I think is ethical may not be ethical to somebody else, and maybe to someone else. And I now know that I need to think about it. I shouldn't just make a snap decision. So I haven't been keeping track of my time. I'm assuming it's not.
You have 10 minutes.
I have 10 minutes. Even better then, because even though I'm on the next panel, I'm happy just from my experiences. In the presentation, I'm happy to answer any questions or whatnot that you may have. If you want to buy the book. Yes?
Have you ever used current movies in your classes? For example, there's an ethical dilemma in the movie Drumline, and every time I ask the students if they've watched it, about 40% of them have watched it.
Okay.
So I find that movies, especially current ones that have those type of issues, they relate to those more than anything else that I can bring into the class.
I do use movies, and I would assume, Grace Ann, you do this as well. I use American rhetoric, and so so it'll just have a snippet. It may be 5 minutes from a 2-hour movie or something along those lines. So I do that, and I actually have been surprised at some of the movies that I would have thought the students would have seen and hadn't as well. But it works in either case. Yes?
I found a useful resources, and this is for a graduate student board theory class that I teach. I actually have the students go and interview community leaders.
Right.
And since they're going into government or nonprofit management, I have them ask them about ethical dilemmas and how they've solved those. And then they come back to the class and anonymously. They don't reveal the identity of the person that they interview. I mean, I'll know because I read the reports, but the other class, the rest of the class won't know. But then they're able to talk about, here's some situations and how they've been dealt with. And then they can learn from somebody who's actually in the field. And I also tell them, take your resume when you go and find out if they have an internship. And some of them have actually gotten jobs that way too, or
Wow.
internship opportunities.
And you said this was a graduate or undergraduate?
A graduate.
Graduate class.
Yeah.
So it's probably a smaller class.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I teach our doctoral research methods class, and I've incorporated ethics into that. Except it's really, we talk more about research ethics and stuff like Phil Zimbardo and the power of the situation, and Milgram and obedient studies, but that's not a bad idea as well to have to go out and actually interact. See, with this class, it's typically 45 people, and I think that would be pretty hard
5
to do.
sections of
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yes.
How much time did it cost you to convert from teaching ethics just as a chapter on a day to having to integrate it? Would you anticipate? How much more of a workload did you have in this semester?
It varied a lot whether or not I went with ancillary material beyond what was, because I relied a lot on the ethical dilemmas in the text, because this was the first time I integrated it to such a large extent. If I did it with the dilemmas in the text, it usually took about 2 hours extra. Because what I would do is the text is good in that it gives the references to the newspaper articles about the cases. So I'd go out and track down the newspaper articles and make sure I read them so I'd have all the facts. If it was something like the video cases are actually really nice because they have PDFs with all of your discussion questions if you want to use those. So you could have a 30-minute video case, show a video case and have a video case discussion for 30 minutes with 10 minutes of prep time. I would say the thing that took the most time up front was finding the book. That took several months, finding the book, and that was the hardest part. Because every book rep, I don't want to knock book reps, but every book rep, when they hear you want a book with ethics coverage, guess what? Their book has ethics coverage. And even if it doesn't, it does. And so I had stacks of books that I was thumbing through. I would say, if I had to pick an average, I would say probably an extra 2 hours a class. Sometimes more, sometimes less. And that goes back to that time machine. It was a lot of work.
As a follow-up, do you think the students were more engaged in dialogue with you in the classroom as a result of putting ethics in each of the classes?
Absolutely.
They like to engage on these issues?
Without a doubt. And it's funny, I didn't think to mention it. I thought about it last night, and I forgot to mention it. At least for me, it's always hard at the beginning of the semester to get meaningful discussions. As soon as we get the first A with the Pinto example, and then it just keeps going. So it's more of it, and it's earlier on as well. So I think so. Yes.
I had a question, I have a couple questions actually. Since you are teaching this organization behavior class, so you are finding a textbook with almost all chapters cover ethical issues or examples and cases. So in your every classes, you can spend time discussing and have dialogue with your students. But in some disciplines, like in math and in English, like in geography classes, that they don't have that direct link to
Right.
the ethical study. What is your advice? How would you suggest those instructors in those classes to incorporate those things in class? I mean, obviously, it's not as resourceful. You don't have that much material in every class cover things
Right.
and relate it back to the discipline.
And talk about a class that would be an easy transition is organizational behavior. So how can it's easy?
Right.
I don't know. Like international business, I would think it wouldn't be as easy, but probably easier than other disciplines. Probably going to like Linda and OC's website, it looked like they had stuff by discipline. I could give you some resources. I did go last March to AACSB training on ethics in Tampa, and they had a nice manual that had things broken down by discipline. But you're exactly right, because if you look at the content, there might be 3 pages of resources for management and 1 page for another discipline. So, and I really don't have a great answer for